And we are live. Welcome to the Weekly Roundup. What the heck is going on in the YC and in the world of yoga? We're trying a slightly different format to keep us more organized for this Weekly Roundup, so you guys get to be the first to check it out. Hang on. I got to pause myself on the other thing. Yeah. Okay. So number one, more money in your business. Top post in the YC this last week was posted by Mara, actually, and it was asking the question, what would you do if you have more money in your business? And it was really fascinating to see a lot of the answers that were coming up in there. We'll link the post down below, but obviously make sure you go and check it out, leave your comment on it. But what it really made me think of to kick us off was just the idea that, you know, that you wouldn't have enough money in your business to do certain things that were there. Now, a lot of the things were very frivolous. My answer was I would hire a private chef. I love cooking, and I would think in another life I was a foodie of some sort. But the idea that I could just be like, here's the diet that my family's sticking to, and that's just handled for me, like, seems ultra luxe. Like, that's like the pinnacle of you're crushing it in life from a financial entrepreneurial standpoint.
That's like Oprah.
Mind. So
Oprah does that.
Yeah.
Be the next Oprah.
Right. I mean, I'm also a creature of habit, chase the dopamine, ADHD brain, whatever it is. So that the restriction of like, I don't cook or make something, someone else does it, I think would be way easier for me to stay very healthy in what I consume. But that aside, a lot of the things were like, you know, a sauna or these other things in the business. But the thing that was like a really common thread across all of it was about the team. I want to pay the team more. I want to give the team more bonuses. I want to invest in my team more. I want to hire more in my team. So I thought I'd kick us off there because that was a really interesting thing that came through, that it demonstrates how studio owners want to pay well and want to have their people really, really happy and well compensated, and also want to expand their total team. And I think that that is an important vision to have. And so the question becomes like, why is that money related? Because that is coming up when we say, if you had more money in your business. So like, we're really viewing it as you can't afford to hire someone. And in some cases that's true, but in a lot of cases, I think it's more of a calculation question.
I was just going to chime in on that. It's like, oftentimes knowing what you can pay people is oftentimes owners will make decisions about pay without even knowing if they can afford the pay structure. And then what's the purpose behind? We had that webinar last month or whenever it was that Alex did about, you know, can you afford your pay structure? And I think all too often, we want to pay people more, but then we just blithely give people a raise because of sometimes very intangible things, and not having a comprehensive strategy around your pay and understanding what goes in it and the expense, the implication on the business and the bottom line are really important factors that you need to address before you even think about giving people a raise. Vicky.
Yeah, so that's one part of the problem, and one direction, like maybe paying people too much, more than you can afford. Another one is to not hire a front desk, for example, or other support or admin help that you need. I see that so often in studios that are already up and running, and that this is like, oh, if I had more money, I would pay someone. I would have more front desk hours, but I can't afford them. I can't afford to have people on the front desk. I can't afford this admin help. I can't afford to pay someone to do my social media. So I have to do it even though I hate it. And that's why it is, you know, not as good as it should be. A really good thing with the new coaching program that we're doing now for everyone who's opening a studio and coaching with us is that one of the first things that we do is go through all the calculations for what you need and your budgets for payroll. And we start with the front desk. We're like, I'm going to have this many classes, then I'm going to need this many front desk hours. And we put that money aside first before we figure out how much you can afford to pay to teachers. Because actually that stuff that, you know, those people are so essential. So I really like that about the way that we
Totally
we
agree.
coach towards that now. And so many, you know, these other studios that have that problem, they didn't go through that process when they opened. They didn't think about front desk staff, and then it can be really difficult to add it later if you just don't have the budget for it.
I think to that exact point, Vicky, too, the thing that happens is you get to this place where, you know, if you're not making a bunch of money and you're not actually, if you're not making a bunch of money, and then also, sorry, I'm getting a weird notification here. What is that? All right, it's gone. If you're not making a bunch of money and you're not paying yourself a bunch, then the idea of hiring a front desk seems like way outside of your box. But then what happens is you're in this cycle of sacrifice, and then you arrive at this place where you're like, I'm overwhelmed with all of these different things that I have to do that are very often like back-end administrative tasks that you can't give to a teacher or anything else. So then it's not uncommon for an owner to come to us, you know, 5 years in and be like, I need to hire a manager. And they're like trying to hire this like really high title position. And there are two approaches to hiring. So one is you do top-down hiring. But here's the thing about top-down hiring. If you're going to hire top-down, what you're really hiring is like an integrator or a chief operating officer or someone else who's like way capable, super way up there, and you have to pay them a lot because they're legitimately going to have like massive umbrella level impact in the business. That is a technique, but from a budgeting standpoint, once you're already operating, is very often almost impossible to do, because it's like if you're not giving yourself a huge salary, you can't afford their salary, basically. The other is the flip side of the coin, and 90% of yoga studios fall into this category, where you're hiring bottom up, where it's like, this goes back to, if I had more money in my business, I would hire more. It's also a question of, are you hiring the positions that are going to solve problems to make you more money? So rather than I hire a manager because I'd like to get these tasks off my plate because I'm feeling overwhelmed because I've been doing all the work myself. That sounds really nice. And yes, you should do that. The problem becomes, and we see this a lot, you can hire that person and they answer the email, they do the phone, they like send they create the whatever and do some social media, but then your business revenue stays the same or like goes up a little bit with that person. Versus I would debate, if you hired 2 front desk people, they would have an expense load the same or less than a manager. And if you train the crap out of them, they're going to have more ROI on that investment faster. So it's just like a little bit of a shift of where you're hiring and spending that money as well, and being intelligent that way. And then the only other comment I have to make, Terry, let's bounce over to you, is just to Vicky's exact point. When you set up out of the gate planning for this, I think that what a studio team looks like now versus what it did in the past is or commonly looks like, is different. If I was starting a studio today, I would hire 4 front desk studio assistants or something like that are like sales roles, and like 4 teachers. It would be even. And have like 4, you know, rather than 30 teachers and no front desk or 1 front desk and like all these part-time teacher situation. From a how to like make your business strong standpoint, that model we see really, really works. But it's like a different mentality of approach altogether than maybe the status quo. Go ahead, Terry.
And I was just going to say to Vicky's comment earlier, so if you already have an existing yoga studio, which many of our members in the YC do have, and you're thinking, holy shit, how do I do that? Right? I've got all these teachers and I didn't plan for front desk. And I've heard from several of my clients, like, why did I wait so long to hire front desk? It was the best decision I ever made. And so if you're thinking, and Vicky mentioned the program for studios opening, we're also with our existing clients, don't despair. We're going to be looking into those exact same numbers and looking at where you're at now and really helping you plan for the future in terms of budget. The reason I'm looking over here is we're using this new AI tool called Fathom, and it's just really quite fascinating. Anyway, I digress. So I did some numbers with several of my clients about, I really need desk staff, but I don't think I can afford them. And I'm going to challenge you is that you can't not afford them. And this is going to segue very nicely into what our next topic of conversation is one way to look at it is if you hired a front desk staff, let's just say just start with 20 hours a week and looking at what are the busiest classes. And usually there's a couple of evening classes, maybe like a Saturday. If you just hire 20 hours a week, you paid them $20 an hour. In 1 month, that would, we did the math. It works out to right around $1,000 in payroll. And that includes payroll taxes, right? Because we say in the States, it's about 8 to 10% payroll tax, right? So if you think about that, okay, yes, that's $1,000 a month. Let's just use round numbers. Your membership is $100. If that front desk person in the first month or 6 weeks gets 6 people on membership or 10 people on membership, you've paid for that salary, and then it just keeps rolling, right? Instead of looking at, oh God, this is an expense, it's like, this is one part of your business that there's a tangible result by having front desk staff or studio assistant or whatever you choose to call them. And I'm going to throw this out, and you can disagree with me if you'd like. I'm just going to throw this out, is that I believe that if you have karma or energy exchange or anything like that at your front desk, you are doing yourself a disservice, because your front desk is not just about checking people into class. It's not. It is the golden spot in your business. It is the revenue generator in your business. And if you're not, don't think of it that way. I just challenge you to shift your thinking on that. Because if, like to Josh's point, and Vicky's talked about this too, is you get those people at the front desk dialed in. And we do this with our soulful sales, with our sales training. We're going out to California. If someone took us up on our boot camp offer, Josh and I are heading out to California next week to specifically train their staff. So what are you waiting for?
Yeah. Small comment and then a little different angle on this whole thing. The karma or energy exchange at the front desk thing, we as a business coach, we also have to say you may be, and in fact are likely, putting yourself at actual risk. Like, it's probably not legal as well. And it's rare, but there have been occurrences where we've seen someone who's on like a karma cleaning staff situation working the front desk then end up going back and going through like whatever the workers board is and really making problems for the studio. And it really fucking sucks. So I don't say that to scare you, but it's like, it's our job to also say your business decisions must also keep your business and your family safe. So there's also that element of it. But
to that point too, it's not just front desk. If you have karma cleaners and they slip on the wet floor and, crack their head or get injured, they're not covered by your workman's compensation insurance, and because they're not employees, they're not staff. So that's the other thing. You've got them up there on a ladder changing light bulbs and they fall off the ladder, you're liable. So we're not. And
Terry, to your point, like, you just have to know the risks and be smart about it. Because I wouldn't be the one to say like, don't have karma cleaners. I wouldn't say that. We have karma cleaners. I get it. But there's like, you got to be smart about it. The analogy, the energy exchange element of yoga studios is the equivalent of tipping in restaurants. Like, that's what we don't realize has happened. You have to tip in restaurants in a lot of Western culture because the people who work there don't get paid enough. Like, the equation is wrong, or that's how it started anyways. It started way back as a way to pass the expense to the end user. So the karma exchange, energy exchange, although is a good idea, is a way to lower expenses in the studio because the studio is not making so much money that they can hire a professional cleaning crew every day. Now, am I saying it's wrong or you should or shouldn't do it? No, that's not what I'm saying. I don't even personally think that there's like an ethics issue with it at all, because people are consciously opting in. I'm just suggesting it's like a parallel thing where the equation isn't right. Any well-functioning business should have a system in place for cleaning that they can afford to do. And yoga studios have historically been set up in a way that makes that more difficult. I digress. The other thing I wanted to point out was the other couple of things on there that were really important were, one, marketing. Marketing came up, and marketing, I just wanted to quickly comment, because the other subject matter I know Terry will have a lot to say about. Marketing is one of these things where you have to just plan for it. Like you're never, here's the vision that I would really want a studio owner to see. You're never, it doesn't matter how much money you make, you're never going to get to a point where you're like, well, one, how do you grow if you're not marketing? But two, suppose you grow a whole bunch and you've got excess cash, and then you're like, you know what? Now's a good time for me to invest thousands of dollars in marketing. Like that just isn't going to happen. You know, it's a mentality spending money on marketing. So rather than looking at it like, when I have money, then I'll spend money on marketing, or the reverse. We have studios that come to us sometimes really late in the game. Like when I say late in the game, I mean, they are weeks or maximum months away from closing the fucking doors because they're in trouble. And we help them to the best of our ability, but it's like, it's hard. It's a super grind at that moment. But one of the comments that I've experienced across almost all of those studios is they say, well, if we only had money for marketing, like the other businesses have outmarketed us, they can afford it, we can't afford marketing. And it just demonstrates a paradigm that I feel like needs to be shifted. So the idea with marketing is you just need to know what your marketing budget is, no matter how small, and then just start using it, start doing it, start getting smart about it. So you might have a marketing budget. We're saying 7 to 10% of your gross revenue is a good marketing budget. If that means for you that you have in an entire year, like, I don't know, if you're a small brand new studio, $8,000, $5,000, it doesn't matter. You can only spend $50 a month on marketing, fine. But know what that number is and start using it, start doing something, because marketing is an accumulative effect. And as it accumulates and you have more confidence in its ability to drive stuff for you, then you'll also have confidence to spend more. So yeah, what would you spend more on in your business? Marketing. I think look at marketing as something that's going to compound as you go. Go ahead, Terry.
Well, I also going to say oftentimes too, and we see this with studios. Well, first I'll comment, again, working through with the Healthy Studio spreadsheet that we have, calculator we have. I'm just amazed, perpetually amazed. I've been doing a lot of these, as I know Vicki and our other coaches have with our clients, is right now, very few studios are spending what they should be spending on marketing. It's oftentimes the smallest, you know, we say 7 to 10%, and I have yet to see anybody who's spending even 5%. And these, I'm no shade on it. These are successful studios. It's just and some of them are very successful. It's just interesting. But also I think, because we had a continuing education, we as a team of coaches get together every week, and then every month or a couple of times, usually it's 1% or yes, yeah, it is true, Vicki. Anyway, we have continuing education as coaches so that we can become better at helping you on all that stuff. And one of the things we had a couple of weeks ago, we talked about marketing versus lead generation. So sometimes you have to think about when you're looking at your marketing, it's not just the branding and the glossy and the this, it's actually what are you doing specifically for lead generation and getting people in the door, and what are your pipeline, your funnels, and getting all that built out. It's not just about having a nice ad in the local newspaper, right? It's about what am I specifically doing to get new clients in the door. And so there's that. So lead gen falls underneath marketing. I think sometimes we get confused. I know I did on, well, because marketing is a pretty big umbrella of stuff, right? Yeah. So for me, actually, marketing I included this under my marketing expense, like BrandBot. I use BrandBot. I put that under marketing expense because I looked at that as a marketing expense. I use PerkFill, the rewards program. That was a marketing expense for me, right? So these were things that enabled me to market my business. So sometimes we have to figure out what exactly is marketing and what exactly is lead generation, and where am I spending my dollars and my resources. To Josh's point, if you have $50 a month for marketing, should be spending it on an ad in the newspaper, or you should be spending it on like a Google ad with a specific call to action that you're dialing in and getting a specific thing, the specific result, which is people in the front door.
Yeah, 100%. I think any budget can be utilized intelligently. The last thing I'd say on marketing is just like marketing it always has a cost. Your whole business does this, but like marketing is just an easy example of it. There's always a cost. It's either a bunch of time or a bunch of money. It's a combination of both. It's what proportion of which are you currently is the situation for you currently. Okay, last thing I wanted to say about this, like if you had more money in your business, Terry, you brought this up, retirement, putting money away for retirement. I think this conversation is unfortunately too sparse in the yoga world. And you're someone I've always respected as being really on top of that. I think that it highlights beyond just retirement and like the personal money side, it also highlights like really intelligent budget planning and money planning. We promote sort of not exactly, but very similar to like a profit first methodology for your cash flow maintenance and stuff. But it's the idea of planning for having money, like planning for having money in a savings, planning for a rainy day fund, planning for profit, as opposed to whatever I've got left, that's what I've got. And then you probably eat it all up. And then there's basically like, if you cover your expenses and just barely pay yourself every month and there's nothing left over, that's exactly the same as living paycheck to paycheck. So that's not right. Because if you're going to do that, like there's a lot of jobs you can go take that'll let you live paycheck to paycheck. Go work at the local grocery store, get a discount on food. You're probably in the same place.
Health insurance.
And health insurance. Right. Exactly. So I think that planning for success and planning for money and planning for savings is something that does need to be part of your entrepreneurial viewpoint, because it goes beyond just the business itself. But yeah, Terry, talk to us a little bit about retirement savings and just like, you know, do you have a method for that? How do you do it?
I wish, and those of you who were like are in our YC that are in their 20s and 30s and even early 40s, but certainly in your 20s and 30s, I read one time statistically that if you could put, I think it's like $25 a week away into like an IRA or something like that, by the time you're like my age, nearing retirement, it's going to be worth over like $1 million, right? So first off, oftentimes we think it has to be huge. In the beginning, it can be small, right? And so just like Josh's point is, you can do this in your business, is have an automatic, and this does go back to the profit first, but even if you're not following the profit first methodology, and if you're not sure what profit first is, it's a book, and you can find it on pretty much everywhere, including Amazon. And it's a fabulous tool to how to organize your finances in your business. But even if you just set up, I did this, you just set up an automatic deduction out of your checking account that goes directly into a savings account, right? It's like 25, and you'd be amazed. It's like that. Think about, for those of you who remember, Christmas clubs and layaway back in the day before credit cards became so prevalent, right? You would save the money, you would have a Christmas fund or a vacation fund at the bank and would fund it that way. So think of retirement like that. Retirement is your savings for the future. And a couple of things you can look at it depending upon how you're organized, you're structured, whether you're a sole prop or an LLC or an S Corp. Have a financial advisor as part of your team. And I say financial advisor is, a lot of times people use their accountants, which is great. And also there are people that specialize in financial advisors. So look to maybe hire a financial advisor. Yes, they make their money by taking a percentage of it, but then they will guide you and make decisions for you and meet with you. I've had mine now for years, and we have an annual meeting and we look at things and all that kind of stuff. So that's a tool, certainly as an entrepreneur, having in your part of your support is a financial advisor, at very minimum an accountant. And then look at what you can do in your business. How is your business structured? What are their advantages for saving for retirement? Maybe it's a basic IRA, maybe it's a Roth IRA, maybe it's an IRA SEP. Again, I'm talking here in the United States, right? Obviously, it's going to be different in other parts of the world. But that doesn't mean you can't, depending on where your country is. Maybe Vicky can talk about over there. But of course, she lives in a fabulous country where the state helps, the government helps, So anywho, the primary thing,
after you're giving them half of your money,
after giving half,
you pay them half for 50 years.
Then that's super helpful. Yeah.
But then they help you. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing too. Is
I mean, that's a good system. I don't know.
It's a good system, because it's forced savings, right? Mm-hmm. And everybody's like, that's, I think, not a bad idea, because here in this country, in the States, it's like, oh, well, if I don't put it away, we end up spending on other things. So that's the other thing, kind of goes back to your yoga practice. It is a practice, it is a discipline. And planning for your retirement is that. And so that was a primary driver for me to buy my studio. That was like, I had not put away enough. I needed to get back on the retirement savings. So I definitely went in when I bought my studio, because I was 53 when I bought it. I went in with, I am going to every month put money into savings, into my retirement account. And it was something I did every month. And as the studio grew and revenue grew and my salary grew, that amount increased every year. So again, start small, put it away, and then don't touch it. Don't touch it.
The thing you're triggering for me, Terry, here is exactly that. It is like a yoga practice. It's very yogic. And I think taking care of your financial situation is obviously necessary, but also like shows maturity in your viewpoint of being an entrepreneur sort of thing. Just in that, to really practice yoga, it's not like you have to get to this place in your practice, in my opinion, where it's not a question like, do I go to yoga class today or not? You just go to yoga class when you go to yoga class. Like, it's just part of what you do because it's good for your physical, mental, emotional health. And you just do it, like, end of story. So same thing, just have that $25 a week, $100 a week, whatever it is, like, it just goes out. Like, don't even, and if you're really at dire straits and you got to borrow from it or whatever, like, that's a different situation. But generally, like, you have to just set it up and just make sure that it happens. The other thing that you're making me think of, though, too, is we talk often about a rainy day fund in a business. And it came up recently, like, what is that? So it's the idea of having, 3 months minimum. Terry says 6. I agree. 3 to 6 months. Yeah. 3 to 6 months of whatever your average monthly operating expense is just sitting there ready to go. Like, so you have always a buffer of 3 to 6 months of time. So I would just say start and pick whatever the number is, 3 months, 6 months, but 6 would be better.
1 month. If you don't
start with 1 month. Yeah.
Start with 1 month, right?
Yeah. Start with 1 month. But the question is, how do you get there? Because if you like make a bunch of money when you have some extra and then you're like, haven't been paying yourself, you don't want to be like, well, let's put this over here. That's less exciting. So I think the same technique is really what you want to consider, is have an account that's hard to access. Depending on where you are, when I mean hard to access, like, don't have a card for it. Don't have it attached to something. Money filters over into it, and you have to physically go to the bank to get that money. Okay. That's how you have a rainy day fund that's smart. And have whatever it is, $100 a month, $200 a month. Like, this is an amount that you probably won't notice. Have it just going in there right from day one, and then check in on it quarterly. And here's the fun part about it. The fun part, right, is once you get your 6 month buffer, then you still have the money going in. No, don't turn that off. But then once a quarter, just go like, any excess over 6 months, bonus. Like, I have a few $100 extra, $1,000 extra in cash or whatever to use. You don't have to keep growing it forever necessarily. So it works a little bit like in the profit first, the profit account, that you don't take the profit, it sits there, and then you bonus yourself out a percentage over time. So yeah, I just think same thing, smart way to get that rolling. All right, let's change gears here. What's happening in the yoga news, in the yoga world, bigger than even just the YC? What the hell is going on? And one of the things that's been coming up for a little while that we've actually seen, that's been a partial conversation, and then also the interwebs tell me that it's one of the top 11 trends in the yoga world as well. Honestly, interwebs are like the worst place to find out what's going on in the yoga world, because they're just brutally written stuff. But anyways, I digress. The two things that we're seeing have for a while and that are on trend and are seeing a spike in 2023 especially are active meditation and then also mini yoga. And I want to throw a third one in that we didn't talk about before, Vicky and Terry, and that is mobility.
Yeah.
These are the three things that are like hyper trending. And they all fall into this category of like, it's not like yoga's changing towards these things because it's whatever the trend is. Like this whole narrative that like yoga was a trend and people are over it is totally horseshit. That's not true at all. If anything, there's more people practicing now than ever. What's happening now is like the world is finally caught on to what yoga's been trying to do in Western culture for the last 20 or 30 years. Well, longer than that, really, 50, 60 years, but like especially the last 20 or 30 years, the world's finally caught on and is like reformulating these things. So just to give context for what we're talking about, mini yoga is the idea of a yoga class that's really fast. I'm talking like 10, 15 minutes. That's it. And then active meditation is the idea of, because there's actually like walking clubs and stuff where you just go and you walk in silence. And it's like you're meditating and focusing on breath work, but you're doing it while moving, which is very much Kriya yoga, you know, sort of philosophy of approach. And moving meditation is certainly an element of basically, I don't know, not all, but maybe 80% of, you know, more recent historical traditional, I hate using those words, but you know, air quotes, traditional yoga practices of our time. And then mobility is just the new way to say flexibility, because people finally caught on in the science that like no one gives a shit about flexibility. Having like flexibility isn't the most important thing. Mobility is the most important thing, and they're a function of each other. So that's what we're talking about. Let's dive in on it, because I think that these are interesting things to have on the radar of a yoga studio owner. Go ahead, Vicky.
Yeah, I think this all sounds like people are trying to figure out how to use yoga to improve their quality of life. And it's not always super obvious when, you know, when you see like the website of a yoga studio, and let's say it's like super traditional Ashtanga or even super traditional Bikram yoga, and the way that it's described, it's like we do a set sequence of 26 postures and 2 breathing exercises, and then it doesn't even tell you like what's that going to do for me. And you know, people want to understand that, and I guess that's why these things are kind of trending, because maybe it's more obvious how that's actually going to help people and help them change things and apply these practices to their life. I mean, at least it's kind of what it's telling me. The meditation and moving meditation thing, I feel like that's been trending for a long time. This was something we talked during COVID. It was trending massively during COVID as well. And mini yoga, that just tells me that people want to be able to fit a class into their life, which, you know, a longer class, maybe it just isn't possible. So I think for this, I mean, sure, as a yoga studio owner, you could think about putting, also the mobility, flexibility, like that's kind of a typical thing. People who do other sports and who do lots of gymming and weightlifting, they're really interested in this stuff, but they might not go out looking for a yoga studio. But if their gym puts on a class called mobility, we're going to help you with mobility, you know, they will come. So for yoga studio owners, I mean, it could be something to have classes like that with mobility in the name, shorter classes, perhaps. And what else was I thinking? Oh yeah, class descriptions. That comes to mind here. How are you describing your classes? Do your classes tell people what they're going to get from the specific class? Or is it just, you know, in Ashtanga, we move with the breath? And
what's that mean?
You know, exactly. What does that do for me? Like, I move with the breath.
And why do I care?
Why do I care?
I mean,
I breathe all the time. I move all the time, right?
Right. Yeah. I move with the breath all the time. I walk. Like, how is it going to improve my life? Do your class descriptions have that? Does it tell people when they go on your website? Does it tell people, you know, how it's going to change their life coming to your class? Or does it just say Bikram yoga is a sequence of 26 postures and 2 breathing exercises done in a room heated to 40 degrees and 40% humidity? Like, yeah.
That's what mine used to say.
Yeah.
I guess you were to jump in, but I really quickly going to say too is, and do your class descriptions, is that match what is being taught in your studio? Because we talked about this a long time ago, and I have been to so many classes where, particularly traveling, I'm on the Mind Body app. Oh, this class sounds good, but oh, I go there, it's like, this is not the class that was advertised. So it's like, yeah, so not only to Vicky's point, having that class description, but making sure that your teachers are teaching what that class describes.
So then the question is that written down? Have you defined the format for your classes and written that down somewhere, and then conveyed that to every single teacher in your studio? I mean, how else do they know what the format's going to be?
Yeah, exactly. Did you communicate it?
Well, this goes back to the marketing, brief conversation we were just talking about too, that marketing is bringing your products to market, or in other words, it's clearly communicating the value that you offer the world in a compelling way. But then your marketing and what actually happens have to match. A good example of this is there's a couple studios that we encountered traveling, where we'd be looking up online as we were arriving somewhere, websites, because that was more the primary way you looked at. And they would have this beautiful, polished website with all this great stuff and these big claims or whatever else. And then you would get to the studio, and the studio was run down. It had needed a paint job, and it was stinky. And so there was this incongruency between the marketing and what you're saying. This is exactly the same thing. If you say, here's what we do and what we solve and what our classes are for, and this class is great for this, and then I go in and that's not what I experience as anything that's even aligned with that, that sucks. And then what happens is it breeds distrust. Then I go, well, they're just selling me shit. I don't believe it. I think that the active meditation specifically, I wanted to come in mini yoga first, but the mini yoga, one of the things that I think is a really positive indicator maybe from this is that, and I used to do this actually, in another life, I worked in marine biology. And for 2 years, I lived in southern Chile in a science center. And we couldn't leave the science center. You had to get there. You had to go to this town and then take a bus for 2 hours to get to this other little tiny janky town, and then take a boat for an hour to get to the science center. So when you were there, you're just there, and you're there, and that's it, way deep in this fjord. And it was awesome, but there's we'd go hiking and fishing or whatever else, but there was limited facility or ability to work out or do something. But it had this one big wooden deck. So we'd do yoga on the deck because there's nothing else to do. And at the time, I was a less experienced yoga practitioner, and I didn't have the brain power to be let's look up some good yoga sequences online, because that was also not a thing, and internet was sketchy there. So long story short, I would just do Surya Namaskar A and Surya Namaskar B. That's it. And I would just do 10 reps basically of that. That if you're doing that powerfully, it takes 15 minutes. It's not long, but man, do you feel good at the end of that? Right? Same thing when we were traveling in the Earth Roamer, driving all over the place, and we'd be at a national park or something, and it's just your back's sore, you don't feel good. I'd love to say that we got out of the truck and rolled the mats out with our 2 kids, and we're okay, don't get attacked by a bear and let's practice for 75 minutes. No fucking way. It didn't happen a single time. Now and again, we'd get an hour practice in, but more often than not, what we got in was we would do the Kriya Yoga, Vishnu Ghosh warm-up sequence, that if you're from the Bikram world, the Bikram advanced class, we would do that. And you just get through the warm-up sequence and then do a couple of playing postures. It'd be it's fun to do a handstand. So I do some handstands, and that's it. So that was mini yoga. Now, is that as good as a full class? No. And of course you crave a full class, but the difference is if you looked over the entire year, I still had more minutes of practicing yoga postures than someone who only practices classes once or twice a week. So the positive trend here with this mini yoga concept is people understanding that we can lower the bar of pressure on ourselves for performance. If you're a yogi and you're practicing yoga, you should practice every day, or most days, but that doesn't mean it has to be a full-on class all the time. And where that helps for a studio, I think, is one, you have the ability to offer things virtually. So I'm not saying like offer a 15-minute yoga class, because that defeats the purpose. I'm not going to drive there and park and get my stuff on and go in your room for 15 minutes. So that's not what it is. But like you have the ability to offer a daily like quick stretch class or something like that, or to like train people on that concept. And it just keeps them more engaged and connected with you, and more engaged and connected with their yoga practice, in which case, then if they only practice once or twice a week with you, who cares? They're happy, they're engaged, they want to practice, they want to keep moving. They're not going to cancel their membership. They're going to keep going. So this whole idea of promotion of yoga life, I think mini yoga might be a really positive indicator. That is, if that trends, it's something to really heavily lean into, because it changes your conversation from like, how many days a week are you going to practice? Which, by the way, when we do sales training, is one of the first things we're like, those words don't come out of your mouth. Like that's not a sales technique. In fact, it's one of the worst sales techniques. There's other ways to approach it. But instead of that mentality, how many days a week are you going to practice? We just say like, well, if you practice yoga, you practice like every day. You just practice all the time. Not you have to come every day, but like this is part of your lifestyle. And let's figure out the best way for that to happen. Here's an additional resource and tool for that. Mini yoga, you know.
I was going to say, made a couple of notes, is that this would be a good thing for VOD, right? For instead of, oftentimes people think with VOD, video on demand, you maybe need to have like a full-on class or something like that. Whereas instead, this is, I feel, where VOD can be a great enhancement to your studio and to your membership. And this is something that you could sell it as an additional thing, or it's just part of the membership. As part of a perk of membership, you get access to our VOD, and then you just create these little mini, these mini yoga sequences, 10, 15 minutes max, to Josh's point, just for that specific instance, right? And then the other thing is you could do like a 10-minute breathing or a 10-minute guided meditation or something like that, and keep it really super simple. And that people, I can do these snippets of time, because if you're on vacation, are you going to do a whole VOD class that's 75 minutes? Probably not. So that could be a real practical application. If you're struggling at what I'd like to do VOD, how do I do it? It can be something as simple as that. Just make them.
And it's so much easier.
Yeah,
you could just write down 5-6 sequences that are like 15-minute long sequences and bang them all out in one go. And like, there you go. And don't underestimate that, like, the purpose of that's different. As a practitioner of that, I don't need high variety. It's not a whole class. Right. I just need a few options, so.
I get that, because I use Fitbit, and I just got a notification, hey, we've added new workouts. And when I look at the workouts on the Fitbit, and they have a bunch of them, none of them are more than, I think the longest one is like 20 minutes. Most of them are like 5-minute, 10-minute, 20-minute max. So I think this is where that whole, mini workout comes in. And I also want to just kind of circle back to what we were talking about, mobility, because I absolutely see this because I've mentioned this before. I've been a Beachbody On Demand subscriber since 2015. So now what are we at? 8 years. And I can really see a trend, and I follow certain trainers and I do their programs, and I can see a real distinct change in how they talk about fitness. And I don't hear flexibility. I'm hearing like more about mobility. And even with like the male training, like some of the men and the women too, that particularly with lifting, right? Even in ones that are focused specifically on just lifting, they're talking more. I hear them talking about mobility. I don't hear them talking so much about 6-pack abs anymore. I hear them talking about mobility and this and how to do this. And in fact, they just launched a program, which I think is interesting. It's called Chop Wood, Carry Water. And it's going back to primal movements, what our body is designed, how it's moving your body the way our body's meant to be moved, right? And so I'm just like fascinated by that. Whereas 8 years ago, it was very different. When I go back to the archives and pull out some of these older ones, which I still like to do, it's very interesting, the messages particularly when you're with certain trainers, right, that have been around with Beachbody from the beginning, very different message they're delivering now than they were.
Yeah. The animalistic movement, mobility, animalistic movement. Yeah, is like super, it's been trending for a long time. Actually, last year's summit, we had my friend Sedat Elcom, and he taught a mobility class. We'll
that was such a great class.
We'll get him to come again. It feels so good. It's basically, honestly, it's yoga. It's just yoga practice. It's not really that different. It's just yoga practice from a different angle. It's missing some of the specific yoga elements. Does it give you the same thing as like a full yoga class? No, not from the mental part, but like the mobility part for sure. So I think we're going to see, it's already happening that yogis are conflating it, or like we're adding it into yoga classes. So that's also fascinating and a different debate. But I think the big thing that you're also bringing up, Terry, is like the shift in the industry around why people are practicing things. So there was a study that was done, and then actually a second poll that came out from MindBody maybe a couple of years ago. And it was like circa 2017, 18, people were practicing to lose weight, get in shape. So I can't remember what the third one was, relax or something like that. And then now, like even during the pandemic, but now it's been duplicated. I saw one recently. It's mental health, anxiety, relaxation, like that sort of category of things. It's physical health, which it's inclusive of like mobility and feeling good and free from ailment and disease and whatever else. And then the be in shape part is still kind of there, but it's like way suppressed down. So there's been like a cultural shift in the importance of this and the understanding. And I know I said before that, you know, in Sayulita here, it's interesting because there's these young guys I go play basketball with once a week or something, and they all practice yoga. And to them, it's not a question for them anymore. Like, do you practice yoga? Have you tried it? Like those words never, ever come out of their mouth. They're all like, oh, I usually do class once a week, or I'm going to class tonight. Do you want to come? Like, it's just part of their health routine. It's just understood that they need to keep things in balance by doing that. So there's been a cultural shift. And if you ask them like, why? Number one reason, mobility. Number two reason, mental health. It's as simple as that. So we're poised to really kind of be prepared to capitalize on this. The world's catching up to yoga. I think now yoga has to wake up and from the yoga business side and be like, oh, we should lean into these trends and talk this way and be aware of it and bring this discussion to the forefront in our studio, because it's what people want and it's already what we do, you know? So, yeah.
Well, and definitely check out, just you mentioned MindBody, is that in the main feed, we have the featured section, and up there, I posted a couple months ago, but it's the 2023 MindBody Wellness Index. So if you go into the network, it's right there at the top, along with the summit, and also along with our upcoming webinar the 25th on Art AI. Our friend and lawyer, Corey, is going to be doing a webinar on artificial intelligence in your business and what's happening in that. So that's going to be fascinating. So definitely check out those three things on our featured section in the YC.
Yeah. All right. Last thing for today. We're at the end of time, but I think we got to get there. What's been coming up for coaching? So I know that I've been working on this with a couple of clients. Terry and Vicky both expressed this as well. Your intro offer, but specifically the sale rate of your intro offer. So what we're talking about is people come in for their first class, and regardless of how they arrive, within a reasonable time, what percentage of them purchase whatever your intro is, or your first offer if you're direct to membership, doesn't matter. What's that percentage? And the reason this percentage matters, and why you absolutely, like, this number should just be seared in your brain, what's happening at any moment. You need to know this number. It's one of the most important KPIs for you to be absolutely on top of month by month minimum. The reason this matters is it's literally your entire sales funnel. Like, one of the things that's always fascinating to me, and I can remember years back at a conference talking this through with the crowd when they're in the Q&A. They're like, yeah, but some people don't want to buy that. But we were saying, like, if someone comes in and you don't sell them your intro if they don't make that purchase, and then they don't end up in your brand bot funnel or your loyal snap funnel or whatever else, and they don't get the follow-ups or whatever else, they just did a drop-in, and then like the only emails they get are like, hey, upgrade, hey, upgrade, hey, upgrade. Like, how the fuck are you going to sell them onto your membership? How are they going to find a habitual yoga practice? So beyond the financial element of it, because you're not making money selling your intro, you're making money from your membership. It's the starting point of your entire sales funnel. So getting that number solid is not just like a best practice and probably good for your business. It's literally the thing that must happen when people walk in your doors, or you're screwed. Like, you're just not going to be able to effectively grow your business in a big way. I had a studio last week. They have like 3,600 first visits a year. So they've got tons of volume coming in, one location. Intro offer purchase rate, and we even checked it within the first month, is 24%. So it's like people are coming in and just going right back out the doors. If we just got that to where it's supposed to be, because it's supposed to be 70%, by the way, we're not talking about just like doing better in the business. We're like 3xing the business, 4xing the business immediately. It's what's going to take that business from being like in the solid hundreds of thousands to way high seven figures instantly, just by this one metric, if we can fucking fix it. And it's a simple matter of no one's buying their intro. Sorry, there's my rant on it for a second. Vicky, I know you've been working on this some clients too.
Yeah, I mean, this seems to be a really big problem, bigger than I realized, because going through KPIs with a number of studios, it's the last couple of weeks, this has been turning out to be the most common problem that they all have. The problem isn't that they're not bringing people in, they are getting newbies through the door, and even converting them from an intro to something else, that metric has been pretty good as well. I thought that would have been a bigger problem than what I've seen. It's that intro purchase rate. It's that one. And just like Josh said, this can make such a huge difference. I try to draw it as a funnel, because that's how I see it. I did a post in a couple of weeks, it's tightening up this funnel. You're not getting the same number out. If it's tightened somewhere, it needs to be widened. All the people you get in here, you want as many of them as possible to come out as members on the other side. So it's huge. And I mean, what to do about it? I think it's a good idea to do an analysis of what's happened, what's happening. Like, look at a few different months and figure out. Just look through all the first timers that came in and check it. If you've got like a system that can give you good reports, fine. Like Mind Body Moments, I think, can even do it. Like Wellness Living. If you can't, then you have to just manually. Actually, Moments, you have to manually go in and look. Like, what did all these newbies buy? What's happening to them? You got to do that first before you can figure out how to fix the problem. So I mean, when I've done that with studios, it's been several different things. Some of it was drop-ins, like some studios, and then you could maybe fix it with raising the drop-in price or taking that off the website. But some of them have been like really random things. You're like, okay, so you're putting on like once a week, you have this community drop-in class, and it's like the drop-in is $5. And nothing is being, they're not being upsold to anything else. Like those people, they're not really gonna become members, are they? I mean, you're doing something nice for the community, yes, but what can we do with those people? Can we give them maybe a special offer on the intro? Are you talking to them at all? Like this, the studio owners, this made them think when they did this sort of thorough analysis. So I would just really recommend to
have a plan.
Look. Yeah.
Have a plan of some sort.
First of all, figure out what's happening. What are they doing?
Yeah.
Well,
Terry, just before you jump in, I was just going to add, we've been talking about this for a while too. You have to be aware right now. I don't care what market you're in. I'm absolutely convinced that this is what's happening. By the time somebody discovers your business, hears about it from a friend, looks up your website, decides that they want to do a yoga class, decides that you're the studio to do the yoga class at, books a class on your website, because 90% are booking before they even get there and register, and goes through that effort, drives across town, fucking shows up at the studio. They've already decided, I'm going to try some yoga. And whether consciously or subconsciously, that probably means more than one single class. Like, they're already thinking that way. They've already said yes. So when they come in, you're not convincing them of anything. You're reassuring them that they're in the right place and that their pre-existing beliefs about the benefit you can offer them are true. And if what I'm saying is correct, and it is, little ego twist there, the thing you have to consider is that means that if someone goes through all of that and arrives at the doors, and then you can't upsell them to this next thing, which is usually a stupidly insane deal price-wise, then it's not that like you didn't convince them. It's that whatever happened in your sales and your first class experience, you fucked it up. Like, you dropped the ball, and what you did is convince them not to do it. Yeah. And when we flip that over, I know it's a punch in the gut, but it totally changes the perspective on like, what the heck are we doing here? And going back to our marketing stuff, why market and lead gen and get people in if then when they come in, they just leave after one class? What's the point?
Well, I was just saying, because Josh and I have been doing a lot of on-sites this year, and Josh has done numerous in the past, and we've been on the road a lot this year, and will be continue to do so. Yeah, if you want info about our mini boot camp, we're really excited about our new product we've launched. And what's happening, what we see is, and we talk about this when we do this on-sites and the sales trainings, is it does not matter how someone arrives at your studio. In other words, what past brought them to the studio. Ideally, we want it to be the intro, and that's gold. Good. We give those people an amazing experience, but it doesn't matter whether it's class pass, Groupon, coupon, free buddy pass, bring a date to class. It does not matter what pass they arrive on. What we see is the people at the front desk, be it front desk staff or teacher, even sometimes the owner, are not offering them the opportunity of their intro, regardless of what it is. You've already prejudged, and this is really a good one with ClassPass. And we know ClassPass is a tough conversion. There is no doubt about it. However, are we just throwing in the towel on these ClassPass or social passes, or even a buddy? I think sometimes we've just thrown in the towel on that and just said, we're not even going to try. You can at least try. It doesn't take much to try. You just have to do it, because you might convert some of those people. And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. We did an on-site in May. They were converting an average of 2% of their drop-ins to their first month of membership. After we left, they're maintaining now like a 30 to 32% conversion of drop-ins to their first month of membership. And then here's a really other thing, to Vicky's point, looking at, I would challenge you to not only look at your intro offer sales, and again, depending on your system, but I think you could even do this manually, is what I'm seeing oftentimes when I do KPIs and looking at, okay, first visit arrival as a drop-in, and people are like, oh, well, they buy it online and we're not upselling it. Okay, sorry, because in Mindbody, you can isolate by booking method. And a lot of times it's like that drop-in is being sold right at the front desk.
Yeah, and we can see it in the numbers.
Yeah, we see it in the numbers. So talk about a gut punch. They're there and they're not even they're sold drop-in.
Yeah, and that's what we experience too. I have to say, this sort of stuff, like, it really irks me sometimes in the yoga world, just because all of these narratives that the yoga world perpetuates, and they're super convenient and they sound really nice and lovey, and they're usually total horseshit because there's a different way to look at it. Here's the thought, like, how insanely egotistical could you possibly be that if someone arrives at the studio on ClassPass, you just make the assumption they have no interest in anything else you do, and therefore you refuse to engage them at all? That's just not right. If the goal is to help people with yoga, and you're saying, What I want to do is help expand the world through yoga and then define a habitual yoga practice, etc. And if you say in the yoga world, like, it's not really about the money, like the money is necessary and it is about that, but like the primary thing is doing good and helping and impact and whatever else. But then you have ClassPass as the example that Terry brought up, and you're not trying to help those people succeed in their practice. You're treating them like a second-rate citizen kind of thing in your studio, and you're not trying to upsell them to the pass. It's not about the sale. It's about the fact that the pass equals commitment to a regular practice with you. And you're not putting any effort into that. You're just throwing in the towel, like Terry's saying, and you're just taking the payout from ClassPass. That is just about the money. Like, it's totally the antithesis of the bigger vision for what a lot of studios are really setting out to accomplish. So this stuff, it drives me insane because it's just so obvious. And the same thing to Terry's point, there are these narratives like, oh, well, we have a transient population. There's a lot of traveling people here. They're buying it online before they come in. So if they've already decided, they don't even show up with their wallet. Their friend brought them on the guest pass and they just say that they can't pay for it, blah, 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 blah. Is that true? I mean, these are good points and they have an element of it. I'm not saying that there's no truth to them, but like, these excuses and narratives that we tell ourselves as the front desk owner, teacher, team are really easy ways to let ourselves off the hook for the truth being, you're uncomfortable when someone comes in to stare them in the face and say, hey, Terry, I'm so happy you're at this studio and I'd love for you to keep practicing with us. What most people do to start is our intro offer. It's like $50 for a whole month. You're scared to do that. That's actually what's happening. It gets me fired up, you guys.
Yeah, we can tell. No, it's true.
Good job. All right, intro offers. What's the next step for you? Go, it's what Vicky said. Go know what your rate is. What percentage of people are buying your intro offer? Go a layer deeper. How many are buying your drop-in versus a ClassPass versus something else for the first visit instead of the intro? And then go a layer deeper if your system allows. Those drop-ins, because they're the easiest one to potentially have opportunity for conversion. Where are they buying it? What percentage of it is online versus in the studio? Know those numbers. That's the starting point. If you can clearly identify the problem, you've solved 50% of the problem already.
That's a lot. We've got some good stuff. And if you need help with
stuff.
that, let us know. That's why we're here.
Dude, if you're just cross-eyed after listening to this, book a free coaching call. Don't worry, we've got your back. That's what we're here for. It's what we do all day. All right. Have a great weekend. Appreciate you guys. Go do some yoga. Go save someone's life. Do some yoga classes. Go sell them an intro, dude. Go sell them an intro. Build by the end of the weekend. Have a mini yoga class up. Talk about how it's a moving meditation. Plan for a little bit of savings, put $25 a week away, and start selling some intro passes. There you go. There's your weekend homework.
There's your weekend homework.
If you're looking for it.
Okay.
Cool.